This episode of Hellbent for Horror is brought to you by Patreon supporters and listeners like you. If you enjoy Hellbent for Horror, please consider supporting the show by contributing either on our Patreon site or via PayPal. You can find links to both of those on hellbentforhorror.com. And I thank you for helping to sustain the show. Hi, and welcome to Hellbent for Horror, a podcast devoted to all things related to horror. I'm S.A. Bradley, and I'm a lifelong movie lover, but my heart belongs to horror. My biggest thrill, however, is getting to talk to people about this stuff. I really want to start conversations with you. Those of you who listen to my show have probably heard me talk about The First Kiss. It's that horror movie or book or TV show that hit you so hard emotionally that your world just stopped for a few moments, and you wanted to get that feeling again as soon as possible. You were hooked, and you spent the rest of your life, if you're like me, chasing after that first kiss. And I don't know, maybe you started out just watching movies, but you want a little more, so you start reading books and magazines about the movies. And then you start writing about the movies yourself. And then you try to find other people who are into horror movies too. And then you convince them to spend a weekend covered in fake blood and getting smoke bombs thrown at their head to make a movie. For some of us, just being a passive viewer isn't enough. We need to create. We need to get our voices out there in whatever way we can, because we're compelled to share the love. And we do it because it's fun. It's so much damn fun. And today, I'm joined by Heidi Honeycutt, whose love for horror and exploitation movies is very well known in the fan community. Heidi is probably best known as a film journalist, and you might have heard of a few of the magazines and websites she's written for: Fangoria, The Dark Side, Femme Fatales, Film Threat, Bloody Disgusting, and Film Addiction magazine, among others. Heidi's also acted in horror movies, from trauma films to micro-budget films. She's been interviewed in documentaries for FearNet and True Hollywood Stories, but that only scratches the surface of the multiple ways she's gotten her voice out there, and in another way she has given other people a voice. In 2004, she was a co-creator of PrettyScary.net, the first website devoted to celebrating and promoting women who work in horror. And Heidi continued to give visibility to women in the horror industry with her next website, Fangirl-tastic. And in 2007, Heidi co-created the Viscera Film Festival, a showcase for women horror directors that even toured at horror conventions to screen the movies. Also in 2007, Heidi wrote and co-directed the short film Wretched, which has won awards in film festivals across the world, and I am a big fan of. And currently, Heidi continues her celebration and promotion of women in genre films as the director of programming of Etheria Film Night. And this year's Etheria Film Night is going to be held on June 3rd at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood as a special presentation of the American Cinematheque. And I'm honored and kind of geeking out to be one of the judges this year for the jury prize for Best Film. On top of all that, she's also currently writing a book about women horror film directors. And with that, I want to welcome film author, film journalist, film programmer, and creator of Etheria Film Night, Heidi Honeycutt. Heidi, thanks for being on the show.
Wow, that was great. You know what? Can you send that clip to me, and I can have people play it at my funeral? Because if it's just my family talking, they'll be like, she didn't really do anything. But when you say it, it sounds like I've done so much. It's amazing. I'm like, wow, I want to know who she is.
There we go. Well, I'm glad. So at least we'll keep your attention as well during all of this.
My family at the funeral will be like, I don't know what he's talking about, but, it'll be funny. So.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll make hard copies of it and stuff it in mailboxes and things so that they'll be able to always have a little bit of an idea. But yeah, I think one of the reasons that I wanted to put all that out there as well is you joke. But at the same point, I've listened to a few things that you've done, some interviews on YouTube and some panel discussions that you've had. And you do have a very self-deprecating sense of humor about this. And I think sometimes when you're in the jungle, right, you're in the woods, you're fighting this every day, you're doing this, and you kind of forget the kind of things that you've done. And so occasionally it's not a bad thing to have that kind of thing put in front of you so that you can get a good understanding of just how much impact you've had. Because if I was going to say anything that I've heard or read in various articles that I've read on the internet, including the Twisted Twins putting things up there, is that people are grateful for the amount of attention that you gave them and the opportunities that you gave them, indirectly or directly. So I think that says a lot about you.
Well, that's pretty cool. I'm kind of flattered that people think that I'm giving them opportunities, because the truth is, see, here it is again, the self-deprecating thing. Right. They're doing the work. You know what I mean? Like, if you make a film and it's really, really good, what have I really done except for, show it one night? You know what I mean? So like people, I think that's awesome that people feel the attention and the love, because I really do have that for them and their projects. So
I think that comes through. And I think one of the things that's a lot of fun about taking a look at some of the things that you've done online is you seem to have not only a sense of humor, which everybody knows, but a sense of fun. You seem to be having fun with it. And if it's not fun, it's done, right? And you've been doing this for a little bit of time. So let's start with Etheria Film Night, because it's coming up on June 3rd. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what we can expect?
Yeah, well, so Etheria is sort of, it was developed from the ashes of Viscera, which was our all-female directed horror film festival that Shannon Lark founded in 2007, and I came on as the programmer. And so Etheria was sort of an extension of that, and we decided to expand it to not just horror, but sci-fi, action, thrillers, because we were getting so many great submissions for Viscera that we just couldn't show, because we were like, it's a great sci-fi film, but it's not horror. And so with Etheria, we've been lucky enough to expand the pool. So now we're not just getting horror films, we're getting sci-fi and action and all these and dark comedies. And so the quality of the films is just like phenomenal, because we have so many more to choose from that every year I feel like it gets better and better. And this year there's some really good, and you can talk about this too since you've seen them. Sure. I think there's some really interesting and intriguing sci-fi in the lineup. Oh, yes. Particularly Swell by Bridget Savage Cole and Real Artists by Cameo Wood. And it's not like some of the other sci-fi that I've seen in past years or just in general. It's not like hard sci-fi. It's that weird kind of near future, we can kind of relate to it, kind of Black Mirror style stuff, which I think Black Mirror has really influenced a lot of filmmakers in terms of their storytelling and using technology that we have today to tell a sci-fi story. So I've noticed that for both the shorts we have that are sci-fi. We have 3 sci-fis. 2 of them are that Black Mirror style. One is like a lighthearted, kind of hard science.
Einstein Rosen?
Yeah. Which Olga Osario, the Spanish filmmaker who submitted that, was actually one of our selections last year. She had another sci-fi time travel short called Restart, which is amazing. And so she submitted this one this year. And I was like, wow, this is even better than the one you submitted last year. And you got in last year. So guess what? You're in this year. It's really fun. It's really cute. It's like a story about 2 brothers. And they're quite smart. And it's sort of implied that their parents are involved in physics experiments and some really high level stuff and wormholes. And one of the kids ends up creating a wormhole, and there's a lot of funny things happen. They come back to it, 30 years later, and then they see what the result.
What was that? Mortadella.
Yeah.
He's throwing things into the wormhole 30 years earlier. And of course, as a child, you will do the same thing over and over and over again if it looks really neat. So they're on the other side in 30 years, and they have a rainstorm of very serendipitous things he decided to throw into the wormhole, which is a ton of fun. And I agree with you on the science fiction piece. What I love is that there's kind of like a poetry to the science fiction. In other words, if you were to take a look look at the two big guys, Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. Jules Verne's the hard science guy. He's going to build the submarine, and you could probably build it yourself with his descriptions. And that's a certain type of science fiction. But then you've got H.G. Wells, and even though he's known for his science fiction, he's like, it's a poetry thing. It's like, and he just kind of brushes over what the ships look like. And it doesn't really matter why the aliens are here.
Yeah.
And the time machine kind of looks like this. It's really about the heart of things.
Yes.
And what I liked about the movies that I was able to watch, and specifically because you've brought up some of the science fiction, specifically the science fiction ones had emotion to them and heart. And a lot of people look at these films, say science fiction and even horror, that they're kind of heartless. They don't have a wide range of emotions. So I was really pleased to see that kind of thing happening in the films that I was able to watch. And so you mentioned that you have quite a few submissions, and it's great to hear that some are people who have been on the thing before. And I can't help it. I have to geek out a little bit because this is She-Ra's home planet, right? Etheria?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And most people,
right.
you know what's funny? So you know that. I know that. Most people don't know that. And I think you and I are probably around the same age. But that was my favorite card. How are other women my age not aware of that? How did they not watch She-Ra? It's just mind-boggling. I've had to explain it to some people who are like, "Oh yeah, I never watched that," and I'm like, "What? Please tell me you watched Holograms, though." So
right. Hey, if you do a marathon night, you can call it Eternia.
That's great. I'll steal that.
Steal right away. What's the criteria for getting a movie in Etheria?
Well, basically the film just has to be really, really good. It has to hit. So, I mean, just, in all fairness, I'm not a successful filmmaker. I'm not an executive at Sony or wherever. So really I'm coming from more of a fan and a journalist point of view. So there are people whose films get rejected where I couldn't make a film that good. So it's weird that I'm in charge of sort of moving along what goes to the judges and what doesn't. But really looking at it from that fan point of view, I'm looking for something that really is so good that if I saw this on an episode of Black Mirror, I wouldn't blink an eye. I'd be like, oh yeah, no, that was a cool episode. I wouldn't be like, wow, that didn't at all fit in with the show. Or if it's a horror film, I want to really feel it and get everything that I want out of a horror film. So I want to either see fantastic effect. I want to see good camera. I want to listen to great sound and watch a great story and great characters. So all the things that make any movie really good are the same things that make any genre film really good. So we apply that, and the reason we have the standards that high is because the goal really is we're inviting a lot of people to be judges, and we have a mix. We have journalists like you, we have fans who are also journalists, and we have Rebecca McKendry is helping us out this year. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have people. Axel Carolyn is one of our judges this year. But sometimes it's funny because sometimes some of these women will submit and then they can't be judges. But on the years that they're not submitting, Rebecca McKendry is not, and so she's like, I know, but I totally trust her. I mean, that's a woman who really is extremely passionate about horror. Right. So, and we have a lot of other judges though that are executives or people in high positions who are looking for really great talent. And if we show them something that's just not that good, it won't do them any good because they won't get anything out of it. And it won't do the filmmaker any good because they're not going to be at that level that the studios are actually looking for. And so we're talking about people who are ready to step onto the set of the second season of Jessica Jones and direct an episode, or ready to maybe go in and take a stab at the next Marvel script and direct it. That's what we're looking for.
Well, I think that it's great to hear that you have the mix that you do for the judging, because one of the things that I thought was neat, outside of me actually being invited, which was very nice, was I was going, well, I hope that there's someone with a little bit more clout that these people get seen by. But at the same point, I'm also looking at it and going, what's great about this is if you have people like me, we're kind of like the curve breaker, because we're going to look at it get with a certain style of thought around festivals. Like some festivals, I won't say it's political, but I'll say that a lot of people kind of get in line once something gets told, somebody hears that someone of import says that this is really good, all of a sudden everybody is doing that. And I think people tend to go towards the center on that. Whereas I feel that film festivals, you certainly want to make it look as good as possible. And I did realize that while watching these, that this was done with a lot of skill, many of these films. But you also, this is your chance to really do something interpretive, something exciting, something that's not what everybody has seen before, that maybe people can go, wow, that's an interesting and imaginative idea. And that's one of the reasons that I absolutely loved Wretched. And that was with Viscera Film Festival.
Yeah.
Because it was something that, I would have never heard or been told about in a million years if there were only guys doing it. And why I think that's kind of important is, I grew up with Catherine Bigelow and several other directors who were women, and they were giving it just as good as the guys do. I mean, she out Walter Hilled Walter Hill. And so... And she's just got that swagger down, which is absolutely fantastic. But there's something to be said about being able to fill a void that nobody even knows exists. And so when Wretched came out, that was a point of view that, Walter Hill, anybody would have never been able to come up with from that point of view. And from that kind of mindset, which I found absolutely fascinating because I'm the kind of guy who wants to be surprised. If I'm a horror guy, I want to be surprised. I don't want to have things that are predictable. So I think that that's one of the great things about this festival. Someone who is doing the programming is someone who took that very interesting risk. And I watched the Viscera film festivals on DVD, and a lot of the movies were going towards that, give it as good as the guys do, which is fantastic. Nothing wrong with bathing completely in blood and all of that. But it was really great to see something that felt thoroughly personal, and very original, that was terrifying in a way that I would never expect to be terrified, which I think is fantastic.
Well, thank you. Viscera was a really fun experience for me. I had never done any programming before, but because I had been running Pretty Scary, and I knew Shannon knew that I was really interested in exploring the way that women were interacting in the horror community and as artists. And so she asked me, she was like, literally it started like, she was like, look, I really want to make this festival. I think it would be fantastic. I don't know any women directors. And I was like, wow, okay, let me think. Who do I know? Okay. Well, I know there's Catherine Bigelow. And we really sat there and we were like, this can't be right. Like we know that there are more. Why do we not know who they are? Why do they not have, why are they not being written about? Why is there not a website with, we were kind of baffled. And so that's when I really started, very aggressively pursuing understanding the role of women directors. Not only, and I don't know why I picked directors necessarily over writers. I feel like it's a very unique part of the filmmaking process that often women are not in as much as men for some reason. We'll talk, we can maybe go on to that later, because I know the first thing people want to, it's always about politics and sexism. I'm not sure that it's a very, very complex thing, as is our society as a whole. So I'm not necessarily sure that's it. And I'm not even sure that the exploration of those roles that women have is political on my part, as much as it maybe is some kind of obsessive need to understand this one thing and how it works. Right. But the Viscera films were definitely less commercial. They were definitely of a lower budget in general than the stuff we were using for Theory. And not necessarily, because some of the films aren't high budget, but they look high budget, or they used a good camera. I mean, especially stuff coming from like Spain and Europe. They have access to so many government grants and stuff that we don't have here. So they may not have spent a dime of their own money on their film, or they may have spent, £2,000 and it looks like a $50,000 movie. But Viscera was, and I can only really see this now looking back on it, because at the time I was in it, I was like, okay, I got to put together like 10 films for this DVD? Like, how do I do that? And so I just started contacting all these different filmmakers. And I was like, look, do you have a film? Can I watch it? And so we ended up, that's how the first year was. It was really like reaching out, and it grew from that. And by the time we were in the third year of Viscera, we were getting lots and lots of submissions, which was very cool. And of course, as the submissions go up, the quality of what you choose goes up too. I know I'm talking a lot, and I do a lot of segues, so feel free to steer me. But the one thing I did want to say was Viscera. Looking back on it, and this is something I'm going to be in the book that never ends, the book that I've been writing forever. Right. But this will be in the book. I almost want to call it like the Viscera movement, because I feel like it was feminist, and there was a political aspect to it, but it was very artistic and sometimes veering towards experimental rather than more of the mainstream narrative stuff that we're looking at now at Etheria. And I think because the goals of the festival were different. Like we really wanted to make sure that women's voices were being expressed. And so there were, experimental films, and there were a lot of the films, especially like around 2008, 2009, 2010, where the stories were like Rapture. It was very much female protagonist. Maybe it's an issue of, we're going to talk about body image, or we're going to talk about our periods, or we're going to talk about, being a woman, being pregnant, or like these very like female oriented stories. And I thought that was really cool. Like it kind of reminded me in a way of like the Riot Girl thing in the 90s, where it was like, and I don't think it's completely over yet. Like I still see a lot of filmmakers that blossomed during that time who are still making films today. And of course the quality of their films is better, and they have a big portfolio now. But some of the films are still very like about issue based, or female body or female experience based. Not all of them are, but a lot. But some of these filmmakers are still feeling that, and I think that's really cool. Yeah,
I think movement is actually a pretty good word for it, because I was a horror fan. I went to a horror convention. Shannon was at the table. It was in Sacramento, this incredibly, incredibly small horror convention that we were at. And I see Chainsaw Mafia. And I'm like, oh, well, I got to get me some of that. What's that all about? Yeah. But after I watched the short film festival that they had there, which was basically putting the DVDs on, I came out of there going, wow, that was really amazing compared to the other things that I was seeing. There were some really good films that weren't involved in Viscera, but there were also some that were just, kind of the same old, and it was very intriguing for me. I didn't expect to suddenly go, man, I need to get myself more in tune with the women directors that are out there, the horror directors. I know a few, but how many can I find out about? That happened with me. And so I figure that it's probably a rather big thing. And yes, you mentioned that you're going to talk a lot. We'll come up with a safe word, because I do the same thing. Well, sandwich. If someone starts going too long, we'll just say sandwich, and then we'll just everybody will calm down. That way it'll be. So how about, we talked about submissions, and that you were talking about the quality of submissions that went up for Viscera. How about Etheria? Have you seen submissions just grow a lot since the beginning?
Yes. Well, the first year, a lot of we still were riding on the reputation of Viscera, and the fact that but that means we were well known in the horror community. But that meant that there were a lot of filmmakers that really didn't know about us because they weren't making horror. So we wanted them to know about us. So the first year was really a big reach out year for me as a programmer, to really do my research and look at what are the films that are out there. And if this person doesn't know about my festival, I'm going to tell them about it, and I'm going to ask them to submit. And I do that every year. I do that too now, but I do it a lot less because we get so many submissions now that sometimes films that I'm planning on, I'll be like, I got to email that filmmaker. I got to introduce myself and let her know about our fest. And then I'll look at the submissions and she submitted, and I'll be like, oh, well, that's cool. So that happens now, which is great. But yeah, but it was very much like a look. I'm putting together this fest. I really think your film could fit. I know it's a dark comedy, or I know it's a sci-fi, and that's not what we're known for, but we really want to show it. So the first year was like that, and I've now we have repeat submitters. You know, we totally have repeat submitters, and some years they get in and some years they don't. And then, really it sucks because then they hate me. And it's true. It's really true. And this is what's so funny too, is like, I'm currently trying to, this is so LA, right? I'm currently trying to transition into TV writing. Mm-hmm. So what that means basically is I'm writing a bunch of shit and I'm submitting to a bunch of people and festivals, and I'm hoping somebody likes it. And I'll, get rejections, and I'll be like, God damn it, my script is so good. How could they possibly? And I'll get real. But then I do the same thing to other people whose films are very good. For some reason or another, we just couldn't show it. And they'll be like, I thought we were friends, and I'll be like, we are friends. I only have 2 hours. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, but I understand it.
So you have submissions from all over the world. Do you see any interesting trends coming from filmmakers in different countries? Like, is there a flavor that you're seeing from Europe versus anywhere else?
That's a really good question. I'm seeing the majority of our submissions do come from English-speaking countries. So U.S., Canada, Australia, UK. I'd say that's probably like 50% of our submissions. And then we do get a lot from Spain, France, a lot from South America. And then there's a smidgen from some other countries, including Asian countries. So one thing I do notice is that the current, especially in Canada, and I guess in the US too, when we're dealing with horror and we're dealing with a women director and we're dealing with somebody who's kind of new, this year, there were a lot of body horror submissions, like very sort of Cronenberg-y, like there's one called Impactus that we're screening as a tour film. And it's basically this woman goes to the dentist. She's coming home from the dentist. She's had dental surgery. She's high as a kite. And she has these incredibly gruesome, they're probably hallucinations, but involving like her teeth and blood. And it's really creepy. And likewise, there's one called Undress Me. That's a Canadian film. And it's about this, it's in the same vein as films like, that have just come out this year, like Raw or Bitch. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've seen those two. They're both foreign films directed by women. They're both about like a woman kind of changing in a weird way physically and experiencing strange body stuff. So this one is Undress Me is like that too. It's a girl goes to college. She has a sexual experience, and then some stuff starts happening to her physically, and you don't know if it's in her head or if it's you don't know what happened. But it doesn't really matter because it's a fantasy story. So, but yeah, it's very people exploring like what happens when your body literally you lose control over it, and you literally have no you can't save yourself. You just have to watch yourself either decay or watch some other creature take over your body. Or I thought that was really interesting that is really prevalent this year in our submissions. And the other thing was definitely like the Black Mirror thing. Lots of really good sci-fi films that are not so hard sci-fi as they are like philosophical in nature and open-ended. Like there's no good guy or bad guy, and there's no hard resolution. It's just like how are humans affected by this particular type of technology? How would it affect you? How would it change the way you live day to day, or what your dreams were, or how you love someone? I think there's definitely trends when something's really popular. Indie filmmakers tend to reflect a lot of those same things in their films as they're inspired by it. I mean, there were years where zombies were all over the place, and I know it was because Walking Dead was so big, and really a lot of people were so into it. And other years where it was slasher films, and it was so I see trends. I definitely do. And the different countries. I'm trying to think of this year. There were any severe differences from country to country, but I don't know. There usually are. I mean, there's different filmmaking styles.
Right. And I noticed several different styles that you can see in mainstream films, and some that what I liked was seeing some of the directors who were breaking out of that. Like when I went to film school, it was David Fincher's Seven was out there.
Yeah.
And so everything looked like Seven. I was like, that's the darkest classroom I've ever seen. That's the dark, people are having weddings where there's like a green light and that's all there is in it. And I'm like, I need to get invited to that party. That's going to be awesome. But I loved how people, some of the people that put their films in here really went outside of the box. I thought there was some really expressionistic lighting. There were some that were quite similar, but there were some that really kind of stuck out, especially with color. There were a lot of really interesting things where color just kind of jumped out, and it was very tasty to take a look at. Since you have filmmakers from all over the world, and you're going to have this in LA, do they get to show up for the night?
Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. We're lucky enough that this year, several of the filmmakers are based in Los Angeles, so that's great because I'm like, whoa, they'll be there. But we have one from the UK, one from New Zealand, two from Spain. So we're not really we don't fly filmmakers out because we don't have that kind of budget.
Right, you're nonprofit, correct?
No, we're not a nonprofit actually.
Oh, okay.
Viscera was a nonprofit, but. Now, Etheria is an LLC, but if I were to go out into that, your audience would get so bored and they'd be like, oh my God, is she a paralegal? Like, what is she talking about?
Paralegal if you're doing this.
Right. I say a lot. I'm very sorry. Hopefully you can edit that out a little bit. No, just kidding. But if you can do it. So... But if we could, I would fly everybody. If we had the budget, I would fly everybody out and put them up in a nice hotel and everything. Wouldn't that be fun? But we just don't have it. We're lucky enough to have the American Cinematheque backing us and making us part of their programming and assisting with a lot of the programming and logistics. So we really owe a lot to them.
You've got, why I think that this is fun as well, the idea that you would love to be able to put them up in hotels and stuff is because this is something that is really, I think it can be life-changing. You get to go to LA, you have your movie, it gets seen, and it's acknowledged by people who really champion it. And you seem to have taken a few chances over the years because you had, for the Woman Underground series, BC Butcher, Kansas Bowling. She was only 17 when she made that, and she must have just been exploding with joy. What was some of your favorite stories about filmmakers who you met through Etheria, and it was just like, whoa, this is great stuff?
Wow, Frank, that's another really good question. I didn't even think about it, but a lot of my friends, like people that I immediately look around me and call my friends, are people I met through Etheria. I'm realizing it right now. That's crazy. But people that I have, have become parts of my personal life, who I rely on day to day. There are a lot of filmmakers that have come out from Etheria, and that's an incredible thing that I really should have realized prior to this conversation, but I didn't. So yeah, what a great thing. That way, it's like I get to make friends too. And I meet a lot of really amazing people that I know are going to have really great careers. Like, I think Jill Gevargizian, who last year, the stylist, won Best Film at Etheria and Audience Award. I think she's going to make a feature. I think she's really going somewhere. I think I saw her first film, and then I saw this film, and there's probably maybe 2 or 3 films in between all of it. And the amount of staggering improvement between each film is just so cool to watch that now I feel like she's at a level that's so professional that she's way above, a lot of the other filmmakers who were where she was a year ago, So, I feel like I got to be there from the start. That's pretty cool. Oh, and I got to know the Saskas back in like 2008 when Dead Hooker first came out, at the very first Viscera.
It's the sweetest Dead Hooker movie ever.
Yeah, it really is. But they were at the very first Viscera with Dead Hooker because we had a features day, I think. And so, I got to see their first film. Their first feature. So that's really cool. And now look at what they're doing. And we've also had some cool people that I'm like, oh my God, wow, you really do want to submit to my festival. That's fantastic. Like Rose McGowan's Dawn was in her first year of Etheria. And Amber Benson had a short called She Ven in 2015.
Yeah.
So I'm like, great, that's really flattering that real, people already in the industry will submit their film. That's a cool feeling. Christine Boylan is a writer for Once Upon a Time and Castle. And we showed her film Haas last year. So, yeah, good friends.
Yeah, I think it's something to be really interested in, that you give people who are in the industry the desire for the sense of play, to be able to, hey, I'm in the industry, I'm doing this kind of thing, but it would be so much fun to just do this and get my voice actually heard. So, I mean, that's really cool. And, you mentioned before that, is this political? Is it not? Sometimes I look at where we are right now. We call a lot of things that are really social political. Somehow social studies and civics class has turned into a political statement. And it's unfortunate that happens, but it does, sometimes get people into an uproar. I know when I did my show about women horror directors, somebody wrote me and said, hey, do you have a few movies that you'd like, that I could watch? Not knowing that they didn't watch or listen to that. And I'm going, well, and I listed off about 3 or 4 women directors because I was really high on XX when I saw it. Rode everybody and went crazy. And I got this guy writing me back going, what are you, some kind of libertard? And I was like, you got to be shitting me, right? You got to be kidding me. I'm getting trolled over that. And so, there is this weird knee-jerk thing that's going on. And I think a lot of times it's highly politicized, but there's something social that's there. A question you probably get asked a lot is it really necessary to have film festivals and websites devoted only to women? And I think a lot of time the reason people don't see the point is that they don't realize how much the culture is male dominated. And I don't mean by like the percentage of CEOs in the world, but in a much more unconscious way. How over decades of repetition, we kind of filter information from ourselves. And when you get a point shown to you that you've never even noticed, it kind of makes you think about that imbalance much, much easier. And it's much slyer, and it's also kind of fun. And it does bring the point right home. And I think you had mentioned this in an email, the Bechdel Test.
Oh, yeah.
Where we ask whether a work of fiction features at least 2 women or girls who talk to each other without something other than a man or a boy is the conversation. And sometimes the requirement's even that the 2 women or girls must be named. And I think it's like half of the films don't meet the requirements. And some of them are really, really popular. So give me a few examples of movies that you love that fail the Bechdel.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so I just want to say this about the Bechdel test. I think it's great. And when I watch a movie that doesn't pass it and it's a bad movie, I'm like, well, that didn't pass the Bechdel test, did it? But when I see a movie, that's really, really good and it doesn't pass, I still love the movie. I don't think there's, Lawrence of Arabia is a perfect example of I mean, it's almost a perfect film. Conan, almost a perfect film, in my opinion. It has one woman. She doesn't talk to any other. Well, there's 2 women, I guess, if you count the one that gets her head cut off. But they don't, they don't talk to each other. It's very focused on him and his story, and that's not a bad thing because I think just as much as we need stories about women, about people that aren't white, we need those for people who aren't straight, people who have these completely different life experiences or grew up in completely different cultures. We also need stories about straight white men because there's nothing, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think some of the most beautiful stories I've ever read or watched. Yeah. The Thing. The Epic of Gilgamesh, which not a movie, but
a book, old story.
Yeah, like these are beautiful stories and beautiful, characterizations, and there's all this emotion and beautiful things in it. And I kind of come to the conclusion that when a film is good, it's good and people will relate to it. Like I can relate to Lawrence of Arabia. There's no other women in it. I never fought in World War I. I'm not British. I've never been to, the desert. Well, I have been to the desert, but it's not a film about me or my experiences, but I can relate to the struggle and the emotions and the feelings and the relationships between the people in it. And it's because it's a good film. It's because it's well written and the characters are well rounded and the story is well thought out and it's powerful in so many ways. When you have a film that doesn't pass the Bechdel test and the characters are awful, it's because the characters are awful, not because it didn't pass the test. If you have a
right.
horror, one of the things people always like to complain about is this, traditional slasher films are just about women running around and I'm like, yeah, there are a lot of really shitty horror films out there. Absolutely.
Right.
But when you watch them and you're like, oh my God, that's not even like, that woman is not even a character. She's just, why is she even in the movie? Why are there 6 of them? Why would they go camping to go pick weed or whatever? These stories don't make sense. But if you look at the male characters, they are equally poorly written, also don't have personalities, also totally lack motivation. It's just
even dialogue. They have the least amount of dialogue.
Yeah, like anytime I've ever seen a movie where the girls are just like there to be killed, or they're a stereotype, like they're the slut or they're the final girl. Well, like there's like the jock and there's the whatever, the funny guy, and it's bad characters is what it is. It's not necessarily. I've never seen a movie that had really, really well written male characters and just terribly written female characters. It's always both are just it's a bad movie or it's a good movie, and it's so good that it doesn't really matter what the gender of anyone on the screen is, because you're gonna enjoy this story no matter what.
Right, and I think why I really enjoyed bringing up the Bechdel, not to, as if it's the golden mean, but I love that if you put this to horror films, you just mentioned slasher films. There are several times where women will be talking. They're not going to say much, but at the same point, the women are, as they're slowly getting killed off sometimes, are still having conversations that have nothing to do with getting a guy or about the main character. And movies like John Carpenter's Halloween. Now, granted, it was more written by Deborah Hill, the female characters, but Jamie Lee Curtis talks about how her role as Laurie Strode was probably the best put together character with the best motivation and character development through it than her mainstream films. And Neil Marshall's The Descent is another one. There are a lot of times that horror films, for as much as they get zapped, they tend to get out of some tropes. Of course, they create their own as well.
I mean, yeah, I don't think there's a male horror fan anywhere who can't watch Halloween because it's a chick flick. They're like, oh, it's just these chicks talking about, like, it's not at all. It's like, yes, the characters are women, but it in no way is gonna make it inaccessible to a male for some reason. But I think I really do think the Bechdel test is something I apply to a film that I'm not enjoying. So it's like, if I see the film, if it's Lawrence of Arabia, I'm like, it's gold, A+. I loved that. I would watch it a million times. But if it's like, The Hangover 3, and I'm like, I mean, this is that one joke was funny. Yeah, it doesn't even pass the Bechdel test. Like not only is it not funny and not well written, but there's not even a woman I can relate to on the screen to even have that grab me. So yeah, I think it's something you apply when the rest of the film doesn't work. When you're trying to figure out why a film doesn't work, like maybe this is the reason it doesn't work for me. But that being said, I do think it's very important to have female characters that do speak to each other and that have names and that, have motivations other than, what they're wearing to the wedding or how to get their, stop their best friend's wedding because they found out they're in love with him. Like, I think there's, it's important that it's important to have women directors and women writers, not because of everything should be 50-50, which would be great, but I think it's important because we just need more people telling different stories. So we need more people that are all different from each other, having equal power in shaping the narrative of our arts and culture. Because the stories that you get from a homogenous group are going to be very similar. There's not going to be a lot of new or innovative stuff coming out of it. But if you suddenly have gay people telling their stories, and you suddenly have, black actors on screen in major roles that are real people, and you're exposed to all this amazing new stuff, and you're like, wow, my mind is literally bigger and better because we have gotten to a point where women and minorities are part of the culture building creative roles in our society. And one of those very much is the film industry. So I think it's just important in general. We're very caught up. I'm very caught up in the women thing because, I'm a woman and it's right here. And all the people around me are women who are trying to make it in film. And so it's something we see and talk about every day. It's something that's very important to us. But it's just a small facet of the need for diversity among storytellers so that we have just a better, more beautiful artistic world to turn to relate to.
Right. And you're doing a book now about women film directors, and you've done a lot of writing. And what I love about writing, I mentioned early on that we need to find our voice, or we're compelled to give out that voice. There's something creative and thoughtful about writing that is a little bit different than, say, painting or just talking about stuff. Yeah. And there's a great art to it and a fun to it. And you've written a lot of articles for different publications, as I mentioned before, Fangoria and all of that. So, film journalism, how bad does it suck?
Really bad. It's funny too, because my experience with it and my experience with horror is pretty much since about the year 2000. Mm-hmm. I'm probably the same for you and same for a lot of the people listening to this, where we're not really old. Well, some of us are older, but we're not really old enough to have there's a big drastic difference between, pre-internet and post-internet, and the way that horror, as just a genre evolved online was crazy. And that's how I was exposed to it, was online. And, there was Blair Witch Project, and there were websites for things, and it was a crazy Wild West back in 2000. You could, there was no rhyme or reason to entertainment websites. You could start your own entertainment website, and you could be coming in at cool news. It was just some guy typing in HTML, and because it just was at the right place at the right time, and he persisted, it grew into this bigger thing. Bloody Disgusting was like that. I remember it was 2002, I think. This is an article I would love to write that I've always had in my head, which is the history of horror on the internet. Mm-hmm. And Bloody Disgusting was non-existent until 2002, when there was another site, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was Dark something or something. It was another horror website, and it was the biggest horror website. I can't even remember its name. And it went down. It went down. The servers went down or something. And Brad Miska had wanted to this is what he wanted to do. And he was like, oh my God, that site is down. Strike while the iron is hot. Let's put a new site up right now. So all those people that can't go to that site can go to our site. And that's how Bloody Disgusting started. And I met Brad and started writing for him around 2002, 2003. And it was amazing. I went from, just renting VHS and watching it by myself and obviously I'd gone to college and stuff, and I could write, but I'd never done anything like that before. And I was suddenly getting to go to, and because I lived in LA too, press junkets and interviewing, the guys that made Saw and this and that, getting to do all these really cool things with horror. And there really is such a subculture and a community in horror that it envelops your whole life and all your friends and everything you do. All my social activities pretty much involve people that are in horror, or they're making horror, or they're filmmakers or something. It's not even a conscious thing. It's just, it's one of those, I'm reluctant to call it a job because jobs pay money that you can live on. Writing for horror websites, not then, not now, is not a real job. The only people that can make enough money to survive doing that are the people who become the editor of the site. So if you're the managing editor of comingsoon.net, they will pay you, $3,000 a month so you don't die or something like that. Unless you're the managing editor of a major website, or, you're the weekend editor at Variety, or you own Bloody Disgusting, you're not going to make any money. These websites used to not pay at all. If you were like me and you wrote for them in 2005, you made zero money. Your reward for writing these articles was that you got to go see the movie at a press screening, and you got to talk to James Wan. And then you could go back to your horror friends and be like, wow, I'm so cool. This is what I did. Now they pay a little bit, but they honestly, they pay $50 an article, $75 an article. You can't live on that. So it's got to be a hobby.
Well, it's crazy. It's worse in some ways, and I guess I have to dispel an illusion. I'm actually old enough that I was there for the first Fangoria magazine when it came out, so I'm slightly older than you. Yeah, Mr. Uncle Bob Martin. No, not terribly. I'm not gonna, make myself ancient, but at the same point,
I'm like
you're going,
24,
pre-internet,
and you're like 30,
right?
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 32,
yeah.
Just go with that.
I just turned 26 yesterday. I don't know what you're talking about.
Fantastic. Yeah. So talking about this, it's actually worse now. So I've gotten into, the horror world a little bit more over the last year or so, starting up this podcast. And I've met a lot of people who are making their own magazines, and some of them are bigger names. I'm not going to name them because the experience was really bad. They didn't pay at all, and you had to come with your own idea to actually fight for column spot. Not a big deal, except that you're not being paid, and they never get back to you. They never put it in the thing. So you pitch something to them, and I didn't actually pitch it. I came up with an idea with two other writers. Basically, we were talking about directors who the movie that they're really remembered for now either destroyed their career or nearly destroyed their career. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up with the Unholy Three. You have Todd Browning for Freaks, you have Michael Powell for Peeping Tom, and you have The Thing for John Carpenter. And we were like, they're all in different eras. This could be a fun article. So we get something like 1,500 words. And each of us is going to get 500 to do it, words, that is. And we send it off, and, you sweat to make sure that you get it done by the Tuesday that they ask and everything. And at least give me a reach around. They never even called, never called or said anything. And it's still a dead piece. And I've respected the other two writers, but I've put my piece on Michael Powell on my website because I was like, this is a pretty good 500 word piece. Now that it's mine, I guess, since I'm never going to use it.
You want it out there. Yeah.
But it's amazing how, and why I think it's so important to value the art, and why it's so important to, I come from the Harlan Ellison pay me motherfucker kind of thing, because I think that if you have someone pay you, they'll be on your ass, but they're expecting something and they're going to use it. But when you give it for free, they may get back to you. They may not. They probably had 25 to 30 people writing for that 1,500 word column, that one spot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I do a lot less writing than I used to. When I was running my own website, obviously I would write all the time and just post whatever I wanted. But now I will not write for free. Like, it's not that I need a shit ton of money, but you gotta pay me something, because otherwise I'll starve to death. So I will occasionally pitch articles too to people that I know really well, who like me, that I've known for years, and I'll literally get a, hey Heidi, that would be great. We can't pay. We cannot pay you. We have this really limited budget. And these are like some of the biggest horror websites that I'm talking about. We have a really limited budget, and we've allocated it all. Like, there's literally no money. Like, I would have to pay you out of my personal pocket. You know what I mean? And it's what it is. It's the economy. I'm constantly dumbfounded by stories of sci-fi authors in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, like, Philip K. Dick and all these people that they really wanted, they tried, they wrote a couple stories, they got rejected, and then on their fifth try, story got published, so they quit their job so they could devote themselves full-time to writing. And when I get to that part, I'm always like, wait, what? How, what are you talking about? How, you couldn't do that? That's not realistic. How, they're probably paying him $40. No, they were paying these people like $2,000 for a fucking story. Right. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you've ever met, or talked to, Joe Bob Briggs, John Bloom, extensively. Yet. But the man is, he's an old school journalist. He goes back to the 70s, 80s as a writer when he was super young. And he's done way more than just be Joe Bob. Like, he has had all kinds of investigative journalist pieces and different articles on different magazines. And he will tell you, back in 1980, you would get $6,000 for an in-depth, in 1980 money, for like a in-depth, long-form investigative piece. Today, be lucky to get 200. Yeah. Yeah. It's the economy. It's absolutely the economy. The economy's shit. Everything's shit. The baby boomers destroyed everything. And it is true.
It's a good thing I'm only 32.
Yeah. Well,
I can't be blamed for any of this.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm in that awkward place where it's like I'm on the little too young for Gen X, little too old for millennial. I'm right in that mid spot where I got, all the shitty angst of the 90s. But the technology is sort of going over my head at this point. So it's, it's like, whatever, I give up. I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. So you obviously have done enough film journalism, but now you're thinking about being a TV writer, and I find that pretty intriguing because I don't know if you've read the book "The Revolution Was Televised" by Alan Sepinwall.
No,
but it basically goes back to the beginning of the Fox network, of all things, really starting a revolution on TV, where television became the new, what the golden age of cinema of the 70s was, where you now have the long format where the real artists, if they want to get their story out, they go to television where they can extend the story and do it in a way that is actually without as many downfalls and stopgaps. Fox wanted anything, so they put on the X-Files, and the X-Files actually pushes forward. HBO has Oz. I think those are like the first two that he mentions that really go outside of what anybody ever expected television to do. And so I was wondering if that's why you were thinking about doing that, because Westworld, and the one that really blew me away was Battlestar Galactica, which I didn't want to watch for shit. I was like, I saw that when it first came out. I was only like 10 and I knew it was a piece of crap. Why would anybody want to remake this? Yeah. And I couldn't believe how wild and smart that show was. And I went, okay, TV, you've got my attention.
No, I thought it was a brilliant show too. And that was like the first time Sci-Fi Channel had created anything that wasn't a joke, Like,
Farscape.
You're right, Farscape. But I think they just aired Farscape. I don't think they funded Farscape,
probably
right?
Not.
I think they just bought it for US distribution on their channel. But Battlestar Galactica was the first. Literally, Sci-Fi put in its own money and was part of the production, and that was a big risky call. And everything except for the last 3 episodes was fantastic.
Yes,
but I'll never get over that last episode. I feel horrified, and just like I did at the end of Lost, you know.
I will honestly say the only show that I've ever seen that ended right was Buffy.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Most shows just kind of wheeze. It's like a squeeze box running out of air. Yeah. But somehow Joss Whedon, he just created a miracle from the inception of that show to the end. It didn't hit me while I was watching it. It's going back to it. You realize just how incredibly smart that show was and how well crafted it was.
Oh, but to get back to your question, why? Is that part of the reason? Because, you know what? Here's the thing. I live in LA. I'm a native. I've lived here my whole life. I've went to school with a lot of people who ended up in the entertainment industry because their parents.
That's so bizarre.
And they were rich, and of course, if your parents are rich, you're rich now. And I've just seen so many talentless people get really great jobs in Hollywood. And I'm not kidding you. I know people who are they're the head writer on whatever show. And you talk to them, you sit down with them, and you look at the stuff they're writing, and you're like, this person is no better than I am at any of this. This person's not smarter. There's nothing this person knows. What it really comes down to is these kinds of jobs are one of the very, very last well-paid jobs. There's a couple, other software engineer, whatever, but this is one of the last things where you're still getting an actual salary like people used to get that you can live on, but it's creative work. And I just, it's not about, you can't be a terrible writer. If you're a terrible writer, it's not going to work. But if you're okay and someone likes you, you're in. That's it. Hollywood and the entertainment industry is designed to keep people out. It's not inclusive. It's not designed to take people in and foster creativity. It's really about a bunch of people who make it in, who are making a lot of money, and who go, fuck everyone else. We don't want anyone else in here because we want this job. And it's really, unless, they'll reluctantly let you in if you win a major film festival and you're getting a lot of press attention, you're really popular all of a sudden. All of a sudden they might want to talk to you. But if you're not, you are out. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are. So I think that's stupid. And I want to make enough money to live. And I think my ideas are better than other people's ideas. And I also know a lot of people who work in the industry who I am planning on exploiting for favors to try to get my foot in the door. That's really why. I mean, and I probably shouldn't say it like that because see, you say it's self-deprecating, but honestly, I think it's just truth. Because if you talk to anyone else in LA who's trying to do something, people are embarrassed that they haven't made it. People are embarrassed that like no one will say, yeah, I mean, I made $50 for an article because God, you feel like a fucking loser, right? So people here are very much about you have to present that you are successful. You have to, if you ask somebody, what do you do? I'm an actress. I'm a producer. I'm a writer. Oh, really? What's your day job? Like, how do you actually pay the bill? That's like a question you do not ask because the answer is always like, well, I'm a waitress, or, well, I'm a really lowly paid assistant at this company. People are like, that's not who I am. I am this other thing, even though I haven't really done it. It's like one of the few things you can say that you do without really, you can't be like, I am a model. Well, I haven't actually been paid by anyone for my photo yet, but I will. And therefore, I am a model. You can't say that, but for some reason in the entertainment industry, you can. It's very strange. And I'm a very, what's the word I want to say? I'm like super anti-capitalist and like very, anti, these kinds of structures where people are not included in things. But at the same time, I just, I just want to be able to do what I want to do and make some money and not have to pretend and tell some stories that I really like and that are good, that I think are really good.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of Michael O'Donoghue, who used to write for Saturday Night Live, one of the original writers of the 1975 Saturday Night Live. He was just a crazy man, and he was against the system completely. And he would throw things, and if you bought 2 cups of coffee, you're a capitalist. And he said, the night we were going to the Emmys, I'm being driven in this limo. And they open up the door, and as soon as my foot hits that carpet, it's over. I am part of this system because it's just it's so enticing, so beautiful, and maybe I can make a difference. And so, I hear you when you talk about that. I have to say, it sounds absolutely daunting. It's funny. I'm from Pennsylvania originally, and I grew up in like coal mine country. So if you said you wanted to be a movie maker, you may as well be saying, I want to grow a third head. But failing at that, or feeling as if you had no idea of where to go, the wherewithal, you're going, well, I'm in Pennsylvania. But growing up and going to high school, I thought I had it bad that I had to compete with the kid whose dad was the Chrysler dealer down the street. You've got like the award-winning cinematographer's son and stuff like that. It must be very daunting to look at that wall right in front of you and go, wow, I'm here. I'm in Hollywood, and I still have no friggin' clue how to get in.
It's true. I mean, it's the best way to obtain any kind of good creative job in Hollywood is to be the child of or having sex with someone who is already in. Then that's really the best way. Look at all the kids of, there's all these things they don't have to do. Like daddy just makes a phone call and it's all set. And that's true for almost anything. Like if you have parents that have contacts or that have money, I'm sure politics is the same way. I'm sure if it's like, I grew up in California, I want to be a senator. What do I do? But, if you grow up in DC and your dad's a senator and he's got some friends, you're going to probably end up there. So it's, it is weird. And I see so many people move here from other places. Like it's really weird being a native because most people who are natives do not want anything to do with the entertainment industry unless their parents are in it. But if you're just like a regular person in LA, you're just like, yeah, I grew up in, Torrance and you get a normal job and you're a normal person. All the people that are here trying to make it, trying to do something, they're all from somewhere else. And it's very strange that on Christmas time, I'll be hanging out with people and it'll be like, people will be like, oh, what are you doing for Christmas? Are you going home? And I'll be like, yeah, well, my parents just live, 2 miles away. So probably, and they'll be like, yeah, what I love about Christmas is like, we all get together because we're all away from our families. And it's just like, I'm like, but wait, I'm not, you people are having a very different experience than I am. It's It's strange. I know I went to high school with people who are now, I want to say, like super mega movie stars. And I never thought there was anything special about them when we were in high school. Like I don't know. But it's amazing what nepotism will do for a career.
Right.
And so I plan on using whatever contacts I have and exploiting them for whatever little tiny nepotism I can eke out of the system.
And of course, there is that system, and Hollywood is not all movies. It's not cinema, but it is the film industry, which is a huge, huge piece. But there are all sorts of different avenues. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about your story is you have the films that you write for. You've actually shot your own film, but you've been also in underground and exploitation films quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different world with a whole different Kroger Bab kind of crazy to it. So tell me a little bit about what that's like.
Oh, that's the best. That's the best in the whole world. So my thing was I never wanted to be an actress. So I don't care what I'm in because it's not going to hurt my acting career. And people really liked that because they were like, oh, this chick she'll do whatever. She doesn't care. And that's a very big asset when you're making low budget horror films and other kinds of whatever genre. I don't know. Some of these films I don't even know what genre they are. I don't think a lot of them have even come out because for whatever reason, like that's how low budget, like I'm talking like most of them like camcorder pointed at you, you're on the couch kind of thing. Like that's no budget.
Right.
But there's a freedom, there's an art aspect to it that is so liberating because it doesn't matter what happens because it doesn't matter. It's just a piece of art. It's just, if it's bad, if it's silly, if it's dumb, or if it's inappropriate, it just doesn't matter because it's yours and there's no consequences for making it. That's the best feeling in the world. I've had so much fun making those movies. And, and a lot of it seems like it shouldn't have been fun. Like, if I were to start spewing specific stories about being in the desert for 10 hours without water.
Oh, Slaughter Party? Whoa.
Yeah.
I was so scared.
Did you know?
Yeah, that was the only frightening thing in the film. I mean, obviously it's a trauma film, so it's not really trying to be frightening. But it was like watching the last like 15 minutes of the original Hills Have Eyes, or like running up on the hill and the rattlesnakes are flying at people. I was watching women in bikinis, and the bikinis seem to be getting dirtier and dirtier, and they're running on these rocks. And I'm like, oh my God, how much of this is real blood? Because I can't see how people did not take headers while you've got, the midget, and you've got another. It was like two movies happening at the same time. Oh, by the way, there's this crazy doctor over here. So, wow, we can outrun the midget, but no, now we've got this. And I'm watching it and I'm going, did they have insurance?
No,
because that was like,
there was no insurance.
Yeah, wow.
There was no craft services. There was no insurance. There was this. I mean, this is how these films are made. And there was such a glut of them between 2005, 2010. It was just that 5-year period. I think more low-budget horror films were made by more people than ever will again or ever possibly could have been in the past. It was like that small 5-year golden age of low-budget horror. And because most of it's not about, there's no insurance. Nobody's being paid well if they're being paid at all. But everybody's young. Everybody's everybody's got some kind of troubled part of their life where they wouldn't have ended up there. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you go to,
right.
you go to Vegas and you go to the strip club and you're like, everybody here had something happen that led them to end up here. And that's okay. I mean, they're not, but you gotta wonder. So everybody's trying to be a part of something and create something and just have fun. And the idea of being in a horror film to a horror fan is just the best thing you can think of in the whole world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always love how Romero talks about how every critic that used to bash his films wanted to be a zombie. They just wanted to get dirty and get covered in makeup.
Yeah.
And, I love being able to talk about horror at all different levels. If I want to get a little bit high-minded with it, who cares? I'm going to have fun with that because it's worth it. But getting a bunch of blood dumped on your head, watching people get blood dumped on their head, that's just fantastic. I mean, it's like, would be a great birthday party. I'll have to see what I can do this upcoming year for my 33rd birthday.
But I remember in a lot of these movies, they would put out like a casting call. I never got one through a casting call because I would just get a phone call from like some dude I knew. And they'd be like, do you want to be in my movie? We're shooting a movie. I'd be like, sure. What do you need me to do? Show up on Saturday at this address and wear something really slutty. And I would go and I would have a great time. But they would put out casting calls for other parts in the middle. And, they wanted like cute young girls. And so these girls who were like legit trying to be actresses who had headshots and stuff would show up. And there'd be a lot of stuff that they would be very reluctant to do because they were thinking, I don't want to be topless in this film because my goal is to be a real actress. And if that ever happens, that would be terrible to have in my past. And so there were certain things that these girls just would not do. And I'm not blaming them for it, but that I would do because I thought it was funny or, right. And there was a shit ton of drinking everybody's constantly drunk, on all of these. That
makes that end so much more frightening.
I just think it was fun. It was so much fun. You really feel like you are, part of something really silly and fun.
And you got the meaty, wonderful role. At first, I was like watching it going, shit, she's just sitting next to a tent. She must have really hated being. I'm watching your skin turning redder and redder because they're not correcting the color, and you're just sunburnt. But you have the great moment. You beat the living shit out of the killer, and you get the Night of the Living Dead end. You get shot in the head and fall down. Oh, the tragedy. And it's so hilarious because you're the tallest. I think you were the tallest woman in
I think so. I usually am the tallest woman.
Yeah. And the idea that you're strangling a midget and he can't do anything to you. I was like, did they pick her because of her height? That's just so awesome. It was just so tasteless and so funny and so crazy. And just beating each other with sticks. I mean, you had this huge piece of driftwood, and I'm like, oh man.
I mean, those are the kinds of movies that I like. Like, I love a low budget, crappy horror film from the 70s. I love those like really hardcore exploitation films that are like some weird cross between disgusting and funny.
The Sinful Dwarf and
like those are so great. Like it's that same kind of you have to push things because nobody wants to see a low budget. Well, first of all, nobody wants to see Slaughter Party, so I'm not going to pretend that that's like a movie that anyone wants to see. but nobody wants to see a movie that's boring and badly shot. It's like if it's going to be badly shot, if you're not going to have real actors, make it crazy. Do something off the wall.
Well, that's like Last House on Dead End Street, which I'm old enough to remember the legend of it when it played in drive-ins, and people were going, "I just saw this movie where they're putting smelling salts in this person's face and they're cutting her leg off," and I'm like, "I must see this." And you watch this thing, and it's absolutely insane, and everybody is high on everything possible, but it still has this amazing. It's not boring. If you're bored through that movie, I don't know who you are. But you actually were involved in the Cuckoo Clocks of Hell with Ron Atkins directing.
Yes, I thought you might bring that up since you brought up the Last House. So Cuckoo Clocks of Hell is Jim Van Bebber is in it, and he plays Roger, right? That's the guy's name,
right?
I think, and he does a great job. Roger Watkins. And he does a great job, Jim is one of those people that he takes film so seriously and like eats, lives, and breathes it. Even if it's the shittiest movie that he's ever been in or that he's whatever, he takes it seriously. And so he and I both were very into that movie when we were making it. We were together at the time. And so there's a lot of things I do in that film that you're like, wow, I hope Heidi was dating one of those guys, because otherwise that would be really awkward.
I was like going, she's a good to go girl right there.
Yeah. So it's easy when your boyfriend, when you're both wasted and your boyfriend's, like, baby, it's all about the film, babe, you gotta do it for the art, you know? And you're like, yes, the art. Yes, I will rape this guy with a broken bottle for art.
Oh my God.
It makes sense to me in that moment, you know. But yeah, no, it was crazy. It was really wild. He's, I got to do a lot of other cool things. We made a couple other films together. One called The Archer Project that never came out. It was actually the film that I met him on. And I play some kind of prostitute spy hybrid. I'm not really sure. And he was like a vet who had an alien in his head, and I don't know. But no, Jim and I became very close, very good friends too. And I really we had a lot of fun making those films. We used to, I think we did one with Sage Stallone where, God, I hope my parents don't listen to this. But like, we did one where they needed like an opening sequence for the film, and Jim basically just convinced me. I don't understand, because if you brought this up to me now, I'd be like, that's a terrible idea. But at the time, he convinced me that just a shot of my vagina would be the perfect. Okay, and I was like, yeah, I see that. Let's do it. I don't know where that footage is. I don't know what happened to it. Who knows? But I have to kind of just be a good sport about it, because I did it. I did it on purpose. You know, gotta eat that. So
if you'd have done it in Prague in 1970, you'd be registered in the film registry. So, you know, it would have been high politics at that point. Yeah. But that's hilarious. And
yeah, Cuckoo Clocks of Hell is weird. I literally cannot watch the film. I cannot watch it.
No, I have to admit that I've watched only chunks of it, because it is one of those that you need kind of chunk. You go, okay, I think even I am offended at this moment, and I'm going to need to walk away. And some of it is just the craziness of they just don't stop laughing. Yeah. I mean, you're like going, man, I was like, Atkins must have been right on the edge of crazy when he decided to do this thing, because it was nuts. Just so. I saw a documentary. I think it was The Horror Business that he was in. Yeah. And man, I was like, somebody tell him a joke. This guy needs to laugh. Oh. But the thing is, you seem to be having fun with it, and it's wonderful to see someone diving headfirst into some of the crazy horror films of the independent world. And the independent world can be so much fun. But you even do it outside of that. I mean, you were Ghostula's Haunted Tomb. Yes. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh gosh. So Stacy Ponder, who is she's a better writer than I am. She's a very good writer, and she's a very funny person and big horror aficionado. We were roommates at the time, and we lived in a little house in the valley, and we had a lot of cool friends that had nothing better to do. And we decided to make some silly movies together. And so Stacy would write these, and they were these little horror vignettes. And I was the terrible horror hostess who would introduce these little films. And her name was Ghostula. And it's literally a character that we just came up with in like half an hour. And I was like, I should just put like baby powder in my hair and wear this nightgown. And she was like, great, let's shoot it. And like that was it. Like that's the amount of, but I got to really do some fun stuff. Like she just kind of let me do whatever I wanted, and I got to improv and make stupid jokes. And
I'm a huge fan of horror hosts. And so even as a satire, even if you were trying more Count Floyd than how some of the people were being very real, you hit on some of the stuff that's the spirit of like the second generation of horror hosts. Like there are people out there, horror hosts happen because there was a need at like 11 o'clock at night when prime time started getting bigger and everything. So they just put the guy who did the news in a cape. But people are still doing it, even though there's not a real outlet for it. They're finding outlets. They're doing it live, or they're doing it on TV. Yeah. And you had that same hilarity in there of like, I forget the one where, somebody breaks up with you and you're crying the entire time.
We made the character gay. Because it was after the website After Ellen, which is the big giant lesbian website, wanted to host it. So we were like, okay, well, we'll make it as gay as you want. Like, we don't care, So we had a whole storyline about she has this girlfriend and they have this contentious relationship, and she gets broken up with, and she's kind of a dumbass, and she thinks, she's really she's not prepared for any of these shoots that she thinks she is, because she has her nightgown on, but she hasn't prepared for any of it, and the movies she picks are terrible. It's
right.
Yeah.
Well, but you guys shoot those movies too,
Yes.
correct? The lesbian vampire story with the Barbie dolls.
Yeah, no, that was all Stacey Ponder wrote all of those, and I got to be in a few of those, and I'm not sure. I don't remember if I did a voice of might have done one of the voices. I'm not sure. But yeah, we would have all our friends over, and we would all play a role, Oh, I was just going to say, and then we made, when Ghostula ended, we made those two, well, Stacey wrote them. Like, I have to give her all the creative credit. I just got to have fun and join her. She made In Satan's Closet.
Yes.
And Deadly Dress 4, Never a Bride. Right. And these are just two random, long, fake trailers that she wrote, that she came up with, that are just so funny. And
they're great.
It's so much fun. And I got to play a nun.
You got full mouthful of vomit, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was blood and stuff. Yeah, because I'll do anything. I don't care. And and it was fun, really fun. That was in our backyard. We shot that in our house. Yeah.
That's one of the things that I really, really enjoyed. I'm sitting there and I'm watching, different clips, and I come across these movies, and I know some of the people who are in them, doing quick guest parts. And then others, I'm like, I don't know who this is, but it's so much fun, and it's still loving of the movies. Like Fulci is getting just razzed on Satan's Closet. And I love that you do that, because you mentioned something in one of the pieces that I watched on YouTube. It was you and Jill Kill watching Stenhall Syndrome.
Yes, that was fun. We did that for FearNet.
Yeah, you mentioned that people try to interpret more into things that he does, the maestro. Yeah. And I'm the same way with, as you were talking about Argento, I'm kind of the same way with Fulci. Fulci always makes me scratch my head that people are so into him. I mean, he's fun, he's campy, but, people talk about him like he was this great misunderstood artist, and perhaps he was. I'm still not understanding him. But I loved where you guys went with Satan's Closet, because there's those spiders I swear were in from Beyond. That you actually stole them right off the set. His looked no better than the ones that you guys were using. But it's such a great sense of play. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm overjoyed that you're getting your voice out to people who are trying to make movies, and you're doing it in a, we talked a lot about women, but obviously you're not coming off as someone who's very staunch and political about this and angry. There's no anger here. There's a lot of fun and just a humorous shrug at certain things. And I think that that's really important. I enjoyed that you were on a panel on the Texas Frightmare, which I'm going down to in a couple weeks. I hope I'm going to have fun.
That was 2006 that panel happened. That was an honor. I mean, I was sitting next to Brink Stevens, Linnea Quigley. Like, that was great. I love Brink. Actually, Brink is one of the first people that I really got to know in horror. She lives out here, and she's just the nicest, smartest woman ever.
Oh, I'm so intimidated. I'm going to geek out. She's allegedly going to show up at Cinema Wasteland. I tend to be one of those real freaks that goes to that thing. And Brink's going to be there. And I'm like, oh my God, 2 PhDs. Yeah. And she's got all of this going for her. I need to talk to her. But she's one of the few people out of all the people I could talk to that I'm actually a little intimidated, because she's just got this energy.
She's super engaging and she's super nice. Like, if you could do a whole show on the career of Brink Stevens, it would be fantastic.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You should.
It'd be like 3 hours if I put a minute into every one of the movies that she did. But I'd like to thank Heidi Honeycutt for coming on the show today. Heidi, thanks so much again.
It was my pleasure. Anytime I can talk about myself for a couple hours, I'm happy.
So can you tell the listeners one more time how to get in touch with you and the Etheria Film Night especially?
Oh, yeah. Well, we have a website. That's etheriafilmnight.com. ETHERIAFILMNIGHT.com. I'm also on Facebook, and, I'm not really that hard to find. If you just Google my name, my email and my home address and my phone number probably all come up. So, and I'm always happy to talk to anyone who is a fan of horror or has a question about Etheria or who wants to, put me in their shitty movie. I'll play the mom, whatever, So yeah, I love it. So please contact me. I'm no dick pics or anything like that.
Right.
I made that at the end, to be clear. You never know.
Right. Understood. I should have that kind of like some kind of proviso on my podcast. Yeah. It's but anyway, that's one of the reasons I thank you very much. You are obviously an ambassador for the joy that there is in this art form, which I think is one of the most beautiful art forms, horror. You can just do anything with it. And you are obviously being very open to talk with anybody. And that's really what I do this show for. I look to be able to start conversations. What I really want to do is get into those conversations with people. That's the reward. So I do thank you. And I want to thank everyone for listening to the show. And I do hope I get to see some of you at Etheria Film Night. Come on out, support the artists. Come out, watch some movies and have some fun. Until next time, stay hellbent. And thanks for listening to the show. Hellbent for Horror was written and broadcast by me, S.A. Bradley, and produced by me and Lisa Gorski. You can find more on our website, hellbentforhorror.com, and I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/Hellbent for Horror, and my Twitter handle is Hellbent Horror. You can find Hellbent for Horror on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, and other podcast platforms. And H4H has its own app. You can download it from the Google or Amazon store for Android, and the iPhone version is available on the iTunes store. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay hell-bent.